So all the things that we've been speaking about in here are fundamentally designed to awaken, to provide and awaken to point to the source of a deep sense of spiritual self-confidence, so that we'll be able to take advantage of our great blessings, all the great blessings, to have been born at this particular time in history, specifically so we can take advantage of the great gifts of the modern revolution and the postmodern revolution. Just repeating what I've been saying here, but when you look at the miracle of material and cultural evolution, and the fact that we're not, because of the spiritual emptiness, because of the conscious and unconscious ambivalence about the whole thing, that we're not able to really take advantage of the great gifts we've been giving, you can see this is actually an enormous problem. It's an enormous problem, and it's a cultural epidemic. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? This is a really big, it's not a small, what I'm talking about is, if we can solve this problem at a cultural level, we're going to be able to liberate the gifts of so many of us. So many of us, I believe, have so much to give. But we're not, so many of us aren't even aware of how much we have to give, because we are consciously, unconsciously trapped in a profound state of ambivalence about whether this is a good thing to be here, whether the whole thing is good. A lot of us think that progress is not necessarily a good thing. We're so focused on everything that's wrong, right? You know, there's so focused on all the problems that modernism has created. All the problems, you know, so we're just focused on the problems, and we're just so focused on what's wrong. You know, haven't you noticed how many people just focus, you know, and that if you dwell on that all the time, if that's your fundamental source of, if that's what you're fundamentally giving your attention to is all the things that are going wrong and all the things that are not going right, it, you know, I mean, if that is fundamentally the way you're seeing reality, you're missing the larger picture here. And a lot of people do miss the larger picture because nobody's pointing it out to them. But the larger picture is the fact that evolution is a process that's going, is a process that had a beginning in time that's going somewhere. It has given rise to these emergent higher orders of being and complexity, and we know it's true. You just look back. You just look back. You remember that. Imagine what the universe was like before there was life. No life, just energy and matter. So there was no life. There was a book came out called recently called The Three Big Bangs. A lot of people say there's one Big Bang, which was the first one, the burst of energy and matter. So he said, no, there's actually been three Big Bangs. The first Big Bang was the great primordial flaring forth, but the second Big Bang was life. And I personally like the idea of the three Big Bang, even though if you get into it, you're probably going to want to put a few more Big Bangs in there. At least I do. But I mean, it's just very helpful to think, because a lot of people don't realize that. Imagine what it was like before life. You have to just go back. It's impossible for a human being really to imagine it, because we imagine a lifeless cosmos from the perspective of self-reflective interior consciousness and cognition. So it's actually, you can't really do it. Because even just to be able to conceive of a lifeless cosmos, you have to have a capacity for interiority, self-reflectivity, and imagination that only the emergence of life made possible. So it's actually an impossible exercise, isn't it? But even to realize that is kind of amazing, isn't it? It just goes to show you how far something is happening here. So the three Big Bangs were, was matter and energy, and then life, right? and then finally mind. We speak about culture. It's the same thing. But when you see culture, when you look at culture, you see what the mind produced. Without what we're calling mind, there cannot be culture. And then you see that there's a developmental progression from matter to life to mind and culture. And it's one line of progression. These are not disparate aspects or dimensions of reality. They have no relationship to each other. One builds upon the other. One builds upon the other. It's all part of one unfolding. One creates the conditions that make it possible to give rise to the other, that creates the conditions that makes it possible to give rise to the other, that makes it possible to create the conditions to give rise to the other, and so on, right? So there's higher and higher orders of being in complexity. So when you really let this in, and when you really let it in, I guarantee it'll change your life forever. You'll never be able to forget it. You'll never be able to get over it. It just will blow your mind for eternity, over and over and over and over and over again, because you realize that it's true that evolution is a process that's going somewhere, and that is the greatest truth that there is in all of manifestation. In all of manifestation, when I use the word manifestation, it means the entire evolutionary process. So in all of manifestation, the greatest truth is that we're going somewhere, and it's amazing. Look at where we've come from. If you want to know where we're going, look at where we've come from. So if you look at where we've come from a dead universe to a living universe to a self-conscious and self-aware universe, wow! And just remember a few minutes ago, because of consciousness and a shared interiority, we can't really imagine what a dead universe was really like. It's technically impossible, isn't it? So when you realize these things, when you go from a dead universe to a living universe to a self-conscious and self-aware universe, it's just unbelievable, And this, you should all really be thinking about this, not just here on this retreat, but you should think about this as much as you can, because it will awaken in you a source of awe and wonder and amazement at the miracle of it all. It's just miraculous. At the miracle of it all. It's all so miraculous, isn't it? And then, if you can just be very steady in this contemplation, and then your attention, then you realize it all comes back to you, your body, your mind, your personality, your capacity for interiority, considering all this. And then you have this kind of glimpse of evolutionary non-duality. Now we talk about non-duality from the perspective of cosmic, biological, and cultural evolution. So it's a cosmic insight. And this is something that I often say and repeat. And it's not a new idea, but it's an ever new idea. It's not a new idea, but it is an ever new idea, which is that the human capacity for consciousness, cognition, self-reflectivity, which means your capacity for consciousness, cognition, and self-reflectivity, makes it possible for the universe to be aware of itself, to contemplate its own nature. So when you bear witness to the miracle of emergence in all the ways I've just been describing, when you do that within the confines of your own interior experience of consciousness and cognition, the entire process is able to bear witness to itself through you. You follow? The entire creative process is able to bear witness to itself through you. So that's an insight into an experience of evolutionary non-duality. Because you remember, as we relate this to our discussions of non-duality so far on the retreat together, we discussed the fact that from the ultimate mystical truth or perspective is that there's only one and not two. So there is only one and not two. So when you, from an awakeness to the mystical truth that there's only one and not two, not just as an intellectual recognition, but as a deeply recognized, realized, felt, intuitive, absolute fact, absolute truth, that you are the only one that there is. You are always non-separate from the only one that there is, from the deepest level of your own being. Then there are moments when it becomes apparent that you are the only one that there is, contemplating your own creation. Dramatic, right? It's true.